Good Thursday night, and thanks for joining us tonight here on In Focus. I am Thabo Mdlulu. With just over 3 days to go before November 1st municipal elections, we turn our focus now to women participation in the ANC. Will we see women leaders in the ANC-run municipalities? Here to talk to me about this and more, I'm joined by ANC's NEC member Lindiwe Zulu to be a part of this conversation tonight with your questions for her. Send them through on 072-110-5584. We'll take those live. Otherwise, you can tweet us at Newzroom 405. And of course, we'll read those to her tonight. Minister Zulu, good evening, and thank you very much for your time and joining us on the line. Purely because, of course, as the whole country is experiencing right now, we are load shedding, and therefore we would not be able to have light to be able to see you. Do you think, maybe as we come into this conversation, things would be better as far as the fixing of the energy crisis in the country at the moment if a woman won at Nasrec?
Wow, what a way to start it, Thabo. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you very much for inviting me to your studios, albeit without seeing my face, but I am here. I'm not a robot. It is me, and it's unfortunate, obviously, that we have load shedding. And the issue of load shedding in South Africa, for me, has got very little to do with women or men in terms of leadership. It's got something to do very much with the energy itself being able to be reaching each and every one, because if we think about it, quite frankly, the infrastructure of energy in South Africa was never meant for so many millions of people, and therefore moving from the transformation to where everybody who has the right to be able to get electricity gets to, it's still going to take us a time. And I think that we need to be realistic about the fact that it's 27 years of democracy and changing the old infrastructure that was meant for a few and now for the majority. But also it's about ourselves, particularly us who are in government right now, is about being creative and looking the best ways and the best options. And hence that there is an introduction of not only just relying on Eskom alone, but also looking at other options that can be able to cover the entire country. Seeing light and being able to see where you are, what you're doing in the night, I think is the right of each and every one of us. It's about us as a nation just moving towards finding better solutions than the solutions we've had in the past. And I think the government of the African National Congress has moved to accepting that we can't rely only on one. We need to be able to look towards a whole lot of other options, which the Minister of Minerals and Energy has particularly spoken to, and Minister Pravin Gordhan also, on the other hand, has been trying to explain the future where we are. It's unfortunate that we are where we are today, but that's the reality of the situation. As a nation, we must collectively look for solutions to this crisis of energy.
I'm saying that because, in fact, I was going to start here in any case. I was going to start with the statements by the president of the Women's League at the Welcome Back rally of former President Jacob Zuma, where she says things would be better in the country than at present moment if women won at Nasrec. Now, if you look at the statement by the ANC around Eskom, blaming pretty much the lack of communication from the Eskom management. Now, Eskom management run by male. The particular portfolio of public enterprises run by a man. At the helm of the country, you're finding a man. Even tonight, we were addressed by DMR. At the helm of that politically is a man. Right? All these men seemingly are messing this thing up. I mean, would maybe a little bit of woman leadership there would have helped us steer this thing a little bit better?
Look, from a communications point of view, she's probably right in the essence of ensuring that there is greater communication to our people. And don't forget that the majority of people that have to deal with the issues of energy and no energy in the house, it is the women that have to deal with children who are coming from school. And coming from school, they have to make sure that schoolwork is done and everything, and that food is put on the table. It is the women that have to face that. And then, so in the communication, I think we could do better. Women could do better, as a matter of fact, in communication, because we feel it beyond just the bigger picture of where energy goes to. We feel it in the household much more than anybody else. So from a point of view of communication, she's right. We communicate better because we know that if you tell women that this is what's going to happen and you tell them on time, then they automatically find alternatives of how they're going to deal with their situation because they've got nowhere else to run. However, if we talk about the broader challenges of ESCOM and broader challenges of energy in the South African context, it's a structural problem that even if a woman was to come in, you would still face the same structural problem of the fact that you need more energy to cover millions which were not covered in the past, and therefore your issue of infrastructure and what kind of infrastructure did you build in order to make sure that you cover that, it will still remain. Whether you're a woman or a man, you will still be confronted with the same situation, both from a technical point of view, but also from a long-term planning point of view. And worst of all, you must also realize that in this area of work you're talking about a space of technical engineers, electricians, and you're talking about a space where the majority of black people were never there and to be able to plan, were never there to be able to even appreciate and understand what happens in the back room when it comes to energy generating and all that. We were locked out of this whole situation and this whole process of engineering, of structuring and all. We were locked out. And anyone who thinks that within a period of 27 years would have automatically changed that, if anyone thinks that within a period of 27 years, the minority that used to get electricity by a switch and the black that used to light candles, light paraffin, I'm sure a lot of young people don't even know that there used to be lamps that used to be lit by our grandparents using paraffin and all. So if you were shut out of that process of planning and looking forward to the future, it wouldn't have been possible for us to be able to deal with the issues quite efficiently. But also in addition to that, yes, we must accept that somewhere along the line, despite what I'm saying to you, that it wouldn't have been possible for us to deal with that, we must accept the fact that there were mistakes that were made somewhere along the line in the long and short-term plan of the supply of energy for South Africa in general, lessons learned from the international world, lessons learned from those that have been in this way for a very long time. There were mistakes that were made, and that's why the government of the African National Congress accepts those mistakes, and it's time we fix them.
Yeah. Talking about fixing them, of course, we are 3 days away from the local government elections. If you look at the numbers according to the Center for Social Development in Africa study that is titled, Does Gender Matter in Voter Preference in Local Government? South Africa has 2.7 million more women than men registered to vote. That means 55% are women than men, who are representing 45%. Do you think the results coming out of these elections will mirror this reality? And I'm telling you why I'm asking that question. The ANC in Moses Mabhida region, the regional coordinator, the Mandla Zondi, concedes the glaring gender disparity in its municipal election ward council list in Msunduzi looks bad. In other words, there's just, despite the attempts to ensure that there is parity, people there are still voting men into those candidate lists. Do you think the outcomes of this election will mirror this reality that 55% of those who are registered are women?
Look, it's going to be a long journey for us to start talking about real parity of women and men at this level, despite the fact that the majority of people who actually register to vote and everything are women, despite the fact that the people who hold the strength and courage and everything of all political, well, no, let me talk about political parties. I don't know about all political parties. I know about the African National Congress, that in the ANC, if you look at the number of members of the African National Congress, in the main, it is women who are members of the African National Congress. If you join me when we go out, or join any of the ANC members, including the president himself, you go and see how many of the people that are involved, that are out there in terms of doing your door-to-door. In the majority, you'll find that these are women. However, having said that, there is an appreciation and understanding that the whole issue of participation of women in decision-making structures cannot be isolated just to political parties. It must be put back into the patriarchal society in which we live in, where women in general, across the spectrum, whether it's in professions, whether it's salary parity, whether it's employment and all that, women always have to fight and fight harder in order for them to be recognized for their capacity and capability of being elected or being appointed even in key decision-making structures. So let's put it squarely, as the African National Congress and the Women's League in particular always speaks about the problem of patriarchy, which is still with us, which is still going to be with us unless we fight it. And patriarchy is not something that you can only fight only when you are in leadership and only when you are in a position of power. Patriarchy is what is exercised as power by men over women, and trying to show that they are the ones that always have to be in key decision-making structures of anything, whether it's in politics, whether it's in business, whether it's in NPOs, whether it's NGOs. That's where we need to consistently go back and say, what do we do to deal with the patriarchal issues? What do we do to go back to cultural issues? Because as you rightfully say, that in Moses Mabhida, there was a clear indication of the gender disparities, and that I can tell you, in all the processes that we have set in the African National Congress, throughout the selection process of the candidates, including the selection where we have to bring in communities, where communities need to decide and support different candidates. It is a pain to fight and make sure that women are also considered. Even when the African National Congress makes a decision that is going to be 50% at all levels, the ANC Women's League is always at pains in fighting this in all meetings of the African National Congress, starting with a branch meeting, to a zonal meeting, to a regional meeting, to a National Executive Committee meeting. The Women's League in particular, and the women who are in the African National Congress, we always know when we are going there that we must go there with an intention of making sure that decisions that are taken by the ANC of 50% are adhered to. However, we know we must go in there to fight. And there's nothing new in fighting for the rights of women overall, for the representation of women overall. There is nothing new, but I can say to you, I see a big difference from the time that we started in 1994, or the time that we were actually out, both in prison, those who were in prison, those who were in the underground, those who were in exile. The struggle for getting women to participate in key decision-making structures has always been a struggle all the time.
All right, we continue with the ANC's NEC member Lindiwe Zulu with us tonight. Your questions for her on 072-110-5584. This as we interrogate equality in political participation along the campaign. Particularly, does gender matter in voter preference in local government elections? That's the question we're putting to her next. Stay with us. We're back tonight with ANC's NEC member Lindiwe Zulu, and of course we're talking the question around gender matters and voter preference in local government elections. This, of course, as numbers are indicating, more women registered to vote. In other words, there's a strong commitment and intention to vote from women in these upcoming local government elections. Does that translate in the type of leadership that we are going to see emerge coming out of these elections. 072-110-5584 with your questions tonight, and the conversation continues now. Minister, if you look at this particular question of gender, explain to me the factors that would lead to this view, right? This is a view that is being put forward by this study, that women will vote ANC not because of the faith that they put in Lindiwe Zulu or in the faith that they put in any other female leader within the party, but because they are putting their faith in a man, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Well, look, I'm not sure if that is really a correct assertion, because the ANC overall has in its own manifesto, not being the first time, not being the second time, since 1994, throughout all the leaders and presidents of the African National Congress that have been, the African National Congress have always stood for and said, and even in this case of President Cyril Ramaphosa, it has said, together we must strive for a non-sexist society and must build communities committed to gender equality. You can go back to all the different leaders that we have had in the African National Congress who have said, unless women are given an opportunity, unless we have a critical mass of women who, by the way, the women themselves who are conscious of the need to have women in decision-making structures, who believe that women will make the difference. This has been a standard standing policy approach of the African National Congress, which, by the way, was driven by the ANC's own experience in terms of the participation of women in building the African National Congress, but the participation of women in the liberation struggle itself, and the participation of women in building democracy today. But also it's the experience of the ANC, which knows that if women are also being given the opportunity to lead a nation and be part and parcel of decision-making, South Africa will be a better place. And therefore, yes, it is also true that the women who are there, because of what they have seen of President Cyril Ramaphosa responding to the needs of women when he is called upon, they also put faith in him as the president of the ANC, as the president of the country. They believe that what he has been saying, what he has done, since he started being a president, if we can go back to the marches that went to the Union building and the formation of specific structures that were going to be able to assist us to lift the lives of women through ensuring that women are able to participate, through ensuring that women are protected against gender-based violence, through ensuring that women receive what will help them to be lifted from poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Yes, from that point of view, I'm 100% sure that they see in him a leader who is also committed. Even though he belongs to a collective, they believe that what they hear of him say is what he is going to make sure that happens.
That's not what the study says. I mean, 3,500 people who were asked. Out of them, they're saying 5% of them, more women, will vote ANC than men. 5% more women in that particular number will vote ANC than men. But also, that number really believes that the electoral fortunes of the ANC may hinge very greatly on women's faith in President Cyril Ramaphosa, not in the collective. Where does that put the debate that women participation in this vote is quite important and critical?
Well, the vote of women in any election, let me tell you, is very critical. And considering the fact that actually women are in the majority, by the way, so that vote of women is critical. And if that vote of women in ensuring that the ANC as a political party wins the election, so be it. We want to win the elections, and we will use every vote that presents itself. We will mobilize every vote that presents itself. And if it is the women who we find, according to the research that you are talking about, it's saying that it is women who are going to vote because they think that the current president of the African National Congress and president of the country is going to give them what they want as women. Because, look, also the issue of women must not be looked at narrowly from a point of view just women being in key decision-making structures. The issue of women is way bigger than that. It is about women's safety. It is about education. It is about transport. It is about women, us creating, as government, creating a conducive environment for women to be able to take care of themselves, take care of their families, take care of the children. So it's broader than the issue of women representation, but of course, the importance of women being represented is critical at this center. And by the way, if you look at the figures or the issues as far as the 2016 elections, for instance, again, 58% of the voters, even there, were women. If we were to go back to earlier elections, we will find that it is women. So the ANC in particular needs that critical mass of women, not only as voters, but the ANC needs those critical mass of women to be also in a political decision-making structures. And by the way, we don't only fight for women in the political space. We fight for women to be in critical positions of leadership in all structures of our society, whether it's in communities, whether it's in politics, whether it's in business. We committed ourselves to this struggle way long before we are where we are today.
Now, talking about that, do you think women in the ANC are fully behind the step-aside resolution? Some have been maybe one would say attacking it, maybe attack is a strong word, saying that it will adversely, or in fact it has adversely affected women in the run-up to these local government elections.
Well, if we talk about that, you might want, I might not have the figures of how many women actually are in the space of a calling for them to step aside. I'm telling you, if you were to go and do a research, you'll find that there's less women in that category of people of comrades who have been called to step aside. But also, I cannot narrow the participation of women to issues of step aside. I can only say that women who are in the African National Congress, those who stand for the transformation, for the rebuilding, for the strengthening of the African National Congress, will participate in policy decisions and in decisions that will have to strengthen the African National Congress. And if this is one of those issues that need to be enforced by the African National Congress, it won't have a choice whether you're a woman or a man. If according to the criteria that has been set by the African National Congress, why anybody has to step aside, it's got nothing to do with you being a woman or a man. It's got everything to do with the decision that was made by the African National Congress in order for us to deal with the deep-seated challenges within the African National Congress of divisions, within the African National Congress of comrades who also in their position of power act against what the ANC has sent them to do, and comrades who also find themselves in corrupt practices and so forth. So the issue of being corrupt has got nothing to do for the African National Congress. It's neither here nor there whether you're a woman or man. If you have been found to be guilty as stipulated by the African National Congress, it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman.
Now, finally, and then as we wrap up the conversation, there's been, of course, other issues raised around gains that are made during this time of elections that are then later lost between the elections. For example, when women resign, others, they step down because of retirement or maybe even ill health or whatever other reason. What do you think should happen that those gains are not lost in between the elections?
Firstly, there must be consistency in our own organization, and the majority of men and women who are committed to fight for a non-sexist society, who are committed to gender equality, who are committed to gender parity. We have always said, and again, the Women's League has been in the forefront in the battle. I call this a battle because this is what the Women's League does all the time in all structures of the African National Congress. They say we can't have gained and had women leading in these positions. And then when a woman is either lost through whatever means, then that woman is replaced by a male, because what then happens is that the very 50% that you are talking about is lost. And in many instances, women sometimes are even threatened. Some women end up even thinking they shouldn't be participating as leaders or something like that, because they are being threatened one way or the other. One of the biggest challenges that we must deal with as South Africans overall, which I personally think we must deal with as South Africans, is the issue of violence. How do we get a situation where women are participating in a branch meeting, and way down the line, you have 3 women bodies lying on the street because somebody came and shot at them? This might look like it's a problem for the African National Congress alone. Let me tell you, this is a South African problem which all South Africans must deal with, because it also stems, in terms of violence, it stems from the disrespect of human beings. The fact that women can be easily killed anyhow is something that needs to stop. Stop the violence against women and children and all. But can we, as society in general, deal with something that South Africans, some of them, not everybody, let me not brush everybody with one brush, but the bottom line is that out of the anger of the past and everything, some people still think that to deal with the situation you have to be violent. Some people think that from taxi drivers to taxi owners to everything that you name it, where we find violence, whether it's in the Cape Flats and all that, you find that there's violence. Let us deal with violence as a nation so that there can be peace for everybody, whether you are in politics, whether you are in business, whether you are in school, whether you are everywhere, whether you are a teacher or a nurse. You mustn't be threatened with violence because somebody wants a service and they think the only best way they can deal with you is to be very violent in our approach. It's a societal problem. Let's deal with it.
Minister, I appreciate your time, and thank you very much for having this conversation with us tonight. ANC's NEC member and Minister of Social Development, Lindiwe Zulu.